He didn't think twice about canceling the ride. Didn't care that the man was standing in the pouring rain. Didn't care that it was late, cold, and he was the only car nearby. To him, it was just another nope moment. Just another face he didn't want in his back seat. Just another hoodie. Just another night. What he didn't know was that the man he left behind wasn't just anyone. And when he walked into the interview room the next morning, he'd come face to face with the truth. A truth that would leave him speechless, because the same man he judged in seconds was now holding his future in his hands. Underscore. The rain came down in thick sheets, bouncing off the pavement like a warning. A lone man, dressed in a hoodie and jeans, stood under a flickering street lamp, clutching his phone as headlights approached. Uber ETA. 1 minute. White Honda Civic. Driver Chad. He glanced down the road and spotted the car slowing toward the curb. Relief softened his face. For a moment, the car hesitated, blinked its indicator once, then suddenly veered back into traffic and sped away. Ride canceled. Reason no show. He stood still, soaked and silent. Not surprised. Not really. Just tired. The driver glanced into his rearview mirror, eyes narrowing at the man by the curb. Nope, he muttered. Not tonight. Not with that look. Not in this part of town. His finger hovered over the cancel button. One tap. Gone. Back home. The man toweled his hair in silence. His hoodie, still damp, hung over a chair. He sat at the edge of the bed, scrolling the Uber support page, but never clicking report. What would it change? He had places to be tomorrow, and people to impress. The next day opened with glass doors, polished floors, and buzzing LED lights. An elegant building in the heart of the city. Inside, on the top floor, a conference room prepped for a day of executive interviews. A tall, composed man in a navy blue suit stepped through the door. No longer in a hoodie. No longer standing in the rain. Today, he was here as part of the senior hiring panel for a major tech firm. The nameplate on the table read, Chief Technology Officer. He adjusted his collar and flipped open a resume packet, reviewing the next candidate. A frown touched his brow. Next interview. Chad Everett. The name clicked. Hard. So did the face in the profile photo. The Uber driver. Outside, the same driver sat nervously in his Civic. He wasn't wearing his Uber shirt now. He'd squeezed into a suit that didn't quite fit, clutching a folder of outdated code samples and hoping no one asked about his resume gap. He took a deep breath, muttering to himself, fresh start, clean slate. You got this. Chad Everett, 11 o'clock. The receptionist called out. The driver entered the room, smile tight, hands clammy. Then he saw him, the man from last night. Dry now, elevated, powerful, seated in the middle of the panel, expression unreadable. Watching, waiting. The driver's smile faltered. He stumbled through greetings. Good morning. Please have a seat, came the reply. Calm, controlled, chilling. The driver sat down, trying to focus, but sweat beaded on his forehead. The memory of last night's decision hung in the air like smoke. The first few questions were routine, handled by other panel members. But every few seconds, the driver's eyes darted back to that one face. Then came the shift. A new voice cut in. How do you make decisions under pressure, Mr. Everett? The driver stammered. I try to be fair. Quick thinking, but thoughtful too. And what about snap judgments? The driver hesitated. I try not to jump to conclusions. Silence. Then, from across the table. Let me ask something else. Last night, did you cancel any rides? The driver blinked. Air caught in his throat. I don't recall. Maybe. It was raining, I think. The man across from him nodded slightly. It was. The room grew still. The man on the panel leaned forward. Let me tell you a little story, he said calmly. There was a guy waiting in the rain. Quiet, patient, dressed down, sure, but not lost, not helpless. Just another person trying to get home. The car came, then left. No explanation. Just vanished. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to. The irony twisted deeper with every word. And today, here we are. The driver's face had turned pale. He whispered, "I'm sorry. I didn't know it was you." "That's the point," came the reply. "You didn't care who it was." For a moment, no one spoke. Then the CTO continued, "You know, people see the suit and assume I've always been in boardrooms. But I know the street. Grew up just 5 blocks from where you passed me last night. No silver spoon. Just books, grit, and long hours." He paused. "People see what they expect. Hoodies, accents, skin. They build a story around that. But real stories, mine, yours, go deeper." The driver leaned forward, voice low. "I made a mistake. I judged someone I didn't know. And I'm sorry." The man behind the table studied him. "You judged a man who could have been anyone. What if it had been someone needing a job, a parent rushing to see their kid, or someone just having a rough night? You didn't know, and you didn't ask." The driver swallowed hard, eyes now fixed on the floor. The panel stood. The interview was over. As the driver turned to leave, a voice called out, "Oh, and Mr. Everett?" He paused. "Sometimes we don't get second chances, but sometimes we get tested twice." A long beat passed. "We'll be in touch." The driver walked out, unsure if that was a threat or an invitation. The elevator door slid open, revealing a visibly shaken Chad stepping out into the parking garage. He moved like a man carrying a secret, fumbling his keys, heart still pounding. "I blew it," he muttered, gripping the steering wheel of his Civic. He saw me. He knew. A voicemail beeped on his phone. "Thanks for coming in today. We'll follow up soon regarding next steps." It didn't sound promising. He stared at the phone, jaw tight. This was my last shot. Then, a new email notification popped up. Subject, urgent follow-up interview request. Chad blinked. "Wait, what?" He tapped it open. "You are invited to return tomorrow for a special problem-solving exercise with senior staff. Please report to the 9th floor at 10 a.m. sharp." His hands trembled. Was this mercy? A second chance? Or something else entirely? In a different part of town, the man in the suit sat alone, staring out a window, eyes lost in thought. He didn't usually let emotion interfere with business, but something about this particular situation hit deeper. He picked up a photo from his desk, his younger self, in a graduation cap, standing beside his mother outside their old apartment building. "She always told me to lead with grace," he murmured. "But sometimes people need to be shown the cost of their assumptions." He tapped his phone. "HR, I'd like to revise tomorrow's assessment, make it more personal." Chad walked into the new meeting room, trying to hold his composure, but what he saw made his blood go cold. On the screen at the front of the room was a slide titled, "Bias in the Workplace, a Simulation." Around the table sat a panel of senior staff, and at the head of the table once again, the man he left in the rain. But this time, he wasn't silent. "Welcome," the CTO said. "Today's test isn't about coding. It's about who you are when no one's watching." Chad swallowed hard. "I'll be honest," the CTO continued. "This is unconventional, but your past employers said you're capable, just inconsistent with people skills. So we've created a simulation. You'll be presented with a series of real-world scenarios. The team will observe your judgment." Chad nodded hesitantly. "Okay, I understand. You'll begin now." In walked a young intern, nervous, shy, and visibly underdressed. Chad was instructed to lead a mock onboarding meeting with him. As the intern sat down, Chad shifted uncomfortably. Something about the kid rubbed him the wrong way. He spoke slowly. Wasn't polished. "So, what exactly are you hoping to get out of this role?" Chad asked, tone colder than intended. I'm just really excited to learn," the intern replied. "I don't have a degree, but I taught myself Python last year and—" Chad cut him off. "Right. Well, it's a competitive environment here. You'll want to sharpen up." From across the room, pens scribbled notes. Silent glances were exchanged. The CTO's gaze was locked in. Chad could feel the pressure mount. He'd just done it again, assumed the worst. The intern stood abruptly. His voice changed. His posture sharpened. "I'm not actually an intern." Chad blinked. He continued, "I'm part of the evaluation team. And everything you just said, it's being recorded." The CTO stood. One of our core values here is recognizing potential beyond appearance. You were told this was a test of your judgment, not just your manners. Chad's face turned red. I didn't mean to, I thought. Exactly, the CTO cut in. You thought. You assumed. You decided who he was based on how he looked. Just like you did in the rain. The room fell silent. You see the pattern? But just as Chad lowered his head in shame, something unexpected happened. The CTO leaned forward. Despite everything, I believe in growth. I've made mistakes, and I've been given second chances I didn't deserve. He paused. So here's the deal. There's one final scenario, one that will determine your future here. It's not theoretical. It's real, and it involves someone you don't know yet. Chad blinked. I'm listening. The CTO slid a folder across the table. Read this carefully. Then meet me in room 7B in 30 minutes. And whatever you do, don't treat this like a test. Just do what's right. Chad opened the folder outside the room. It was a case file, a real one. A junior developer at the company was being reviewed for dismissal due to multiple late arrivals and a recent outburst at work. But as Chad read further, the truth unfolded. The developer lived across town, caring for a disabled parent. Their outburst followed a denied request for adjusted hours. They'd never been late until after the parent's health crisis began. Their work performance prior had been exceptional. There were email exchanges, pleas for understanding, all ignored. Chad closed the file, heart heavy. This wasn't a test about him anymore. It was about what he'd do with someone else's future. He stepped into room 7B. Sitting there was a quiet woman in her 20s. She looked exhausted, but determined. Hi, she said, trying to smile. You're here to decide if I get to keep my job, right? Chad took a breath, sat down across from her. He looked her in the eye and said, I read everything, but I'd like to hear your side. No judgment, just the truth. She stared at him, uncertain. Meanwhile, in a private room next door, the CTO watched through a one-way mirror. Another exec turned to him. Are you really going to give this guy a say in someone else's career? The CTO didn't blink. If he can learn to use empathy, maybe he deserves a second chance too. But one wrong move. He trailed off. Back in room 7B, the woman leaned forward to speak. She looked across the table, eyes tired but sharp. I've already told my story 3 times this week, she said, her voice low but steady. And every time, it felt like no one was actually listening. Chad sat across from her, hands clenched beneath the table. He was supposed to evaluate her, decide whether she was worth keeping. But as she spoke, something inside him twisted. I'm not perfect, she continued, but I've done everything I can. I show up late because I take care of my dad. He's been bedridden since the stroke. I leave early to get him medication. That outburst, I was told if I was late one more time, I'd be fired. I panicked. I snapped. But not because I didn't care, because I do. Her voice cracked. Chad looked down at the file again. The one that said she was a performance risk. That labeled her as volatile. He saw himself in every line. Misjudged. Misunderstood. One bad day outweighing a dozen good ones. Behind a one-way mirror, the CTO stood silently with a few other executives watching the exchange unfold. One of them, a silver-haired board member, folded his arms. You're really going to let him handle this? After what happened? He's not handling it, the CTO replied calmly. He's being handled by it. He needs to look in the mirror, not the glass one. Another exec chuckled softly. You always did like turning your scars into case studies. The CTO didn't smile. This isn't about punishment. It's about perspective. If he fails this, he's not ready to lead. I was 14 when my mom died, the woman said quietly. It was just me and my dad after that. He was a construction worker, worked until his spine gave out. Chad nodded slowly. You didn't put any of this in your appeal. She shrugged. I stopped expecting people to care. He leaned back, conflicted. Do you even want this job? Her eyes flared. I need this job. I'm building something better for us. I need a little room to breathe. Chad stared at her, heart pounding. Every fiber of him wanted to speak as a manager. Professional. Objective. But something broke through. He saw himself. When he was driving 12 hours a day just to afford certification classes. When one missed alarm nearly cost him everything. He cleared his throat. What if I spoke on your behalf? Recommended you stay. But under probation. Could you prove yourself? I already have, she said. But I'll do it again. 30 minutes later, Chad stood in front of the review board. His palms were damp. The CTO sat at the head of the table, unreadable as ever. Well, one of the HR leads asked, "What's your recommendation?" Chad swallowed. "I believe she should stay. With support, not punishment. She's not broken, she's burdened. And she's been carrying it alone." The room went silent. "You're not just saying that because of your own situation?" Someone asked pointedly. Chad looked the person dead in the eye. "No, I'm saying it because I finally understand what it means to be seen and to be overlooked. She doesn't need saving. She needs a chance." Later that day, Chad was called into a private office. It wasn't a boardroom, just a quiet space, furnished with soft lighting and old books. The CTO sat across from him. "You surprised me today," he said, steepling his fingers. "And that's not easy." Chad managed a small smile. "But you're not done yet." Chad's brow furrowed. "There's more." The CTO nodded. "One more test. Not one we designed. It came to us." He slid a tablet across the table. On screen was a formal email, timestamped just hours ago. Subject: urgent, Uber rider misconduct claim. Chad's stomach dropped. "What is this?" The CTO stood, voice like stone. "A former rider submitted a complaint. They say you canceled a ride last month, left them stranded after asking for their drop-off location." Chad's face drained of color. I don't remember." The CTO held up a hand. "You don't have to defend yourself right now. But legal wants to review your driver history. And depending on what they find, it could impact not just your employment here, but whether we report you to Uber's ethics board." The air tightened. Chad stood slowly. "So this isn't over." "Not yet," the CTO said. "But let me be clear, this isn't a trap. It's an opportunity. One that comes with consequences." Chad nodded. "Do I get to respond to the complaint?" "You will," the CTO replied. "Tomorrow morning. But tonight." He handed Chad a small black envelope. "You have somewhere to be." Alone in his apartment that night, Chad opened the envelope. Inside was a note. Address: 234 Rosewood Terrace. Time: 8 p.m. sharp. Purpose: closure. No signature. No further instructions. The address led Chad to a modest brownstone on the edge of a quiet neighborhood. Lights were on in the front window, flickering like candles. He hesitated before knocking. The door opened. An older woman stood there. Mid-60s, eyes tired but warm. She studied him for a moment, then stepped aside. He said you might come. Chad blinked. "Who?" She didn't answer. Just led him to a small dining room. On the table sat a stack of mail and an old Uber receipt printed out. Pickup canceled. Destination: Children's Hospital. Time: 2:13 a.m. Chad's throat tightened. "I needed that ride," the woman said softly. "My daughter was in labor. Emergency C-section. I begged the driver to take me. He asked where I was going and hung up." Chad's voice broke. I didn't know. "Do you remember me?" He shook his head. "No, but I believe you." She nodded, her voice trembling. "He said you changed after one night, that you started asking more questions, driving different routes, that maybe you had finally started to care." Chad sat down, overwhelmed. Who told you that?" She turned to a photo on the wall, a young man in a hoodie, standing by a hospital window. "My grandson," she said, "the one you left in the rain." Outside, lightning flashed. The woman pulled something from a drawer, a folder, thick, labeled with his name. "What is that?" Chad asked, standing. "His last project," she said. "Before he joined the executive board, he believed in second chances. He was building something for people like you and her." She pointed to a final sheet inside, a list of names. And Chad's name was already circled. I don't know what happens next, she said, placing the folder in his hands. But someone believed you were worth fighting for before you ever knew you'd need it. Suddenly, Chad's phone buzzed. Unknown number. He answered. A deep voice on the other end said, "We need to talk. It's about your future. And hers." The folder felt heavier than it should. As Chad stared down at his name, circled in ink on the last page, a strange weight settled on his chest. This wasn't just paperwork. It was legacy. The older woman's voice echoed in his head. He believed you were worth fighting for before you even knew you'd need it. His phone still buzzed in his hand. The unknown caller repeated, "We need to talk. It's about your future. And hers." Chad took a breath. "I'm listening." The sun broke through the boardroom windows with surgical sharpness. Executives lined the room, notebooks out, eyes narrowed. At the head sat the CTO, his demeanor unreadable. Beside him, the same young woman Chad had defended, now seated as an equal. Chad stepped in, holding the folder and his nerve. This time, there would be no simulations, no setups, just truth. "Before we begin," the CTO said, "there's something all of you need to hear." He gestured toward Chad. "Go ahead." Chad stood at the center of the room. No podium, no safety net. "I won't waste your time," he began. "You know why I'm here. Some of you think I deserve a second chance. Some think I should be gone already." He held up the folder. "This is proof that someone believed in me before I ever showed them I deserved it. That belief changed everything, and it made me look at myself, really look." He turned to the young woman. "I saw someone I once ignored, someone working harder than anyone in this building just to survive. And we almost threw her away because she wasn't polished enough." A murmur spread. He faced the room again. "Let me be clear. I was part of problem. I canceled rides based on zip codes. I skipped pickups based on looks. I wrote people off based on vibes." There were audible gasps from the HR table. "I was that guy," Chad said firmly. "But now, I'm the guy telling you that this place, this opportunity, should be the beginning of stories, not the end of them." The CTO stood. "I want to thank you, Chad, for your honesty, for your growth, and for your courage." He turned to the board. "But integrity means action. So I'm recommending we terminate Chad's candidacy for employment." Chad's stomach dropped. The CTO raised his hand. "But," he continued, "I'm also recommending him for something far more important." A hush fell across the room. He placed another folder on the table. The Impact Fellowship, an outreach and mentorship program started by one of our late executives, the very one Chad left in the rain that night, the man whose story unknowingly shaped this entire journey. The CTO looked Chad dead in the eye. "You can't fix the past, but you can pay it forward. Tenfold." 1 week later, a different office, smaller, warmer. Chad now stood before a group of underrepresented young adults, interns, dreamers, coders from neighborhoods like his, each one with stories, just like the ones he used to ignore. He clicked through slides on bias, growth, and accountability. He told them the truth. All of it. "I used to be blind to people like you," he admitted. "Now, I spend every day making sure no one else has that excuse." From the back of the room, the young woman he once evaluated stepped forward, now promoted to team lead. She gave him a nod. The audience clapped. The CTO joined Chad on the rooftop where it all began. "You still think you lost the job?" the CTO asked. Chad smirked. "No, I think I found the one I was meant for." They stood in silence, looking out over the city. "I hope they talk about this," the CTO said. "I hope people see what this story really means." "They will," Chad replied. "If not because of what happened to me, then because of what they see in themselves." Sometimes, we don't get to erase our past, but we can rewrite the ending. This story isn't just about one man. It's about all of us. How many times have we judged before we understood? Tag someone who needs to see this. Share it if you believe in second chances. Drop a comment below. Have you ever been misjudged or misjudged someone else? What did it teach you? Let's talk about it, because the conversation starts here.